For every one of us who believes that if we lean into our collective expertise, we can ensure high levels of learning for all kids, you'll have as many people making a strong case why that kid's low. And then the extra rub is, kids are gonna make your dreams come true every time. So you call them low, you teach them low, they believe they're low, that's what they'll produce. You hold a crown above their head, you speak greatness into their lives, you give them a reputation to uphold, they're gonna make your dreams come true. Same with your teachers, by the way. So I want to start with that and welcome all of you to Start with the Crown. My name is Ken Williams, and I'm going to ask, I'm not a, I think we're all becoming experts in Zoom, but if you're not speaking, if you would mute yourself, that would be great, and that would help with some of the background noise. I see so many folks on here. I'm just kind of blown away by this. I'm going to do more talking than anything else. And this is going to be one of those sessions where I don't have a bunch of fancy slides, but I think it'll give you an opportunity to make some notes. My goal is for us to go about 45 or 50 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up to some Q&A and try to get as much done as possible. But I'm going to share again, kind of tell you who I am, because I know, some of you don't know who I am, and then we'll jump in. So my name is Ken Williams. I'm originally from New York City. I am the husband of one, father of two. My wife is a fifth grade teacher, and so I get to see a lot of this work happen vicariously these days. I'm a former classroom teacher, assistant principal, school principal. Got two kids, college age. My company is Unfold the Soul, and I do this kind of work all over North America for the past 12 years. This seems like a century ago. We're all be able to gather in big crowds, but that's me on the stage there. And you don't know whether it's worth it or not to take my information down. So I'll have this up again at the end. But I'm going to go through, I want to first start with a couple of big ideas, like what this is and what this isn't, because I think that's important. All right. And so the first big idea is victimize, not victimhood. And so I want to make really clear what this is and what this isn't. What this isn't is me representing the Black community. We're not a monolith. There's many facets to every type of people. And so there's no way one person can represent an entire community. I don't speak for the Black community. However, I think I speak to some experiences that may, shall we say, land on some people's streets. And so these are my opinions. These are my thoughts. I'm not a researcher. What I am, however, is I'm an observer, and I observe pretty well. And then I notice patterns, and I form conclusions, and then I tend to agree with me about those conclusions. And then I seek to get you to agree with me as well. I've even got notes here to make sure I don't miss anything. What this is, I just want to lend some perspective. It's one of those things. This type of forum is kind of out of my comfort zone, but I've been urged and encouraged by a tight circle of friends and colleagues, some of whom are on this call right now, to lend my voice. So while I can speak in front of audiences of 6,000 and talk about the work, there's an introvert inside me and find social media like a big crowd, so I'd rather talk about this stuff intimately. However, we've all got to get out of our comfort zone. And so this is my contribution. This is my contribution. And so one recommendation I have for this, there are a lot of conversations. There are a lot of, let's talk about race. Let's have a conversation. And that's a great thing. In my 52 years, this is the greatest outpouring. This is the most specific outpouring I've ever seen regarding things that have been going on that long predate me, but definitely my whole life. If I had one piece of advice for folks trying to start a conversation, and this is whether doesn't matter, what race you are and where you come from, my one recommendation would be to start with a question and narrow the focus. Because if this webinar where let's say we got together and said, hey, we're going to talk about men today, right? there are 7,000 entry points, right? All of them positive, of course. Okay, I'm just joking there. There's 7,000 entry points for talking about any one topic that broad, and race is the same way. And so my perspective, my entry point is how we move the needle in school. Like, to me, my purpose is today is to talk about the fundamental purpose of schools and what we can do to move the needle academically. Now, from there, man, you can go into issues of, do kids of color feel seen and welcome, and how can we improve that? Are they seeing images? Are they seeing likenesses of themselves in the school? And we can talk about that all day. We can talk about whether Black History Month is being utilized the right way. We can talk about the number of kids in AP. We can talk about 1,000 different things. And without a focused question, a niche question, and there's no right or wrong question, I'm just recommending that you get focused in on a specific question. Because I've been involved with a few calls and it's been very general. Let's talk about race. And then we leave feeling heavier than when we arrive, because you feel overwhelmed. And so today, I'm going to talk about, like, moving the needle. That's all I think about right now. Right now, that's what I'm thinking about. How can schools are built these days to ensure learning, right? That's the fundamental purpose. And so I want to talk about what we can do to leverage that point, moving the needle academically. There are like I said, and should be opportunities for other types of conversations, but this one is going to focus in there. Also, I wanted to do this because, I don't watch the news. Like, it's just the way I'm wired. What I need to know will find me, and it always has. So I haven't watched the news in almost 30 years, and yet I find out what I need to find out. I do know that there's a narrative out there, and what many of these victims have looked like and where they come from and stuff like that. And a part of why I wanted to do this webinar is because I put out a video last week about some times I've had with the police. No one is immune, and so I am. So here's a tip for you: a little bit of sarcasm, but there's a point. I am what's been characterized as articulate and well-spoken. So here's hint number one. If you describe anyone of color as articulate and well-spoken, and they are older than the age of a third grader, it's never a compliment. So that's, even when you're thinking it, like, just swallow it. Just come up with something else. That's not a good thing. But I'm not immune. I've had incidences. I live in a relatively diverse area, and I've been victimized, but I'm not a victim. And so I don't walk around with a target on my back. I don't walk around with a chip on my shoulder. I don't go looking for racism and prejudice. I don't go looking for it. I give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and I connect with who I connect with. However, just by virtue of the hue of my skin and where I live, I've had some challenges, without question. If you watch my video from last week, you know that, waiting for AAA to come and unlock my son's car that's registered to me, a 2003 filthy Acura TL, filthy. We bought it. It was white. It was white for 30 minutes. A filthy car. But he locked his keys in his car on a lunch break. He caught a ride back to work. I pulled up to wait for AAA. Admittedly, I got out of my car, and I'm telling you this for context. I'm driving that day a 1975 royal blue Delta 88 convertible. So it stands out, right? Don't know if it's the kind of car you use if you're running a car theft ring, but I went out and tried all four doors to make sure, because he's at the time, he's 19, he's a knucklehead. So I'm thinking, he's a kid. Maybe he left one of the doors open. And I think two people who saw me in the parking lot noticed. And I get that looks suspicious. And if they let the authorities know that this man is there trying the doors on these cars, I could live with that. The fact that the next hour was a slow convergence of 14 police officers with assault rifles, hiding out in places on their bellies with their rifles trained on my 75 Delta 88 as I sat in the car writing a book on my laptop. it was it was harrowing. I mean, to have a nail strip thrown out into the road uh, as a result. If all they did was come and question me and said, we heard that you were, trying the doors on that car, I could have lived with it. But the fact that their perception was that I was running a sophisticated car theft ring in the area, and they admitted that they saw me working on my laptop for an hour, and their conclusion was that I had spreadsheets out and I was organizing this thing. It's mind blowing to me. It's mind blowing. That's just one. I could fill this hour with all sorts of stories. And so that said, I'm not a victim. Part of being a victim is when you own it. When you own it. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to lie to you. It's an exercise. It it's an exercise. I'm not a victim, but I bear scars. I'm and things that I have to work on. I spent years of my life. I'll just give you just a quick example. When you get messaging over and over again, whether it's through word or through deed, there's just no way to be immune to it. It's about awareness and then trying to shed some of those scars. So, all right, I'm gonna be really vulnerable here. So for years, almost unconsciously, if I walked out of a door into a parking lot, walking to my car, and there was a white woman walking to her car from a different angle, but we're moving in the same direction, a part of me, I would immediately begin processing what I need to do so that she doesn't feel uncomfortable. And I used to find myself slowing my walk down or maybe turning my direction. The number of times I've walked between cars and I hear what I call power lock applause. You just hear all the power locks go. And now I don't do that anymore. But the fact that I think about it, like I think about, don't do that. You have to I have to own who I am. I'm not here to mug anyone. But if I think about that kind of stuff. And so so I'm not a victim, but I bear the scars, and I don't want to say we bear the scars, but I'm sure I'm going to land on some people's street in terms of this stuff. I guess it's to really emphasize that no no one is immune. Everyone comes with baggage, and this process is going to involve learning for all of us, and lots of white folks that I know, and they've come out and said that, and it's going to involve like unlearning for a lot of people who feel like victims or have been victimized and are scarred and haven't been able to shed it. It's going to mean a lot of unlearning for kids in schools because they've received messaging, whether intentional, malicious, or not malicious. It's going to take some time. There's been a learned helplessness to some extent, and I want to talk about some of that. All right, so Corey, when I share my screen, do you still see me in the corner?
Um, we see you. You could see you and a few other guests.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and just talk for a little bit. I can't thank you guys enough for being here. I get an idea of how many Zoom calls you attend. I'm just blown away. All right. So if you don't know me, but I promise you, I don't say things for hyperbole. I don't like. I love what I do. I love being in front of audiences. I love working intimately with schools to help them move from that school to these schools to help build cultures. I love that work, but I don't like. But I don't do a whole lot of posting on social. I don't like the attention. So I guess maybe I'm talking to myself as I'm having doubts that I'm coming off as sincere and trying to tell you that I don't deal in hyperbole. So I'm just giving you my experience. I've never seen a police car or heard a police siren and ever thought protection and safety. It's never in my life. And I wasn't taught that. My family didn't teach me that. No one ever sat me down and said, you'll never feel that way. I'm just telling you, in 52 years, I've never seen a police car and thought comfort. My first thought is, oh shit, what did I do? Or is he going to pull me over? And part of the reason I wanted to do this webinar today is because that has become normal. I've had many friends when they saw the video about what happened with, waiting for AAA. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know. Oh my God, I didn't hear about that. You didn't tell me. And that's because, I don't know, it's normal. It become normal. And one of the reasons I want to do this webinar today is that it should not be normal, but it become normal. Honestly, and this is not to disparage, I have tons of respect for our, folks who are in the military, but it's a different kind of PTSD. And in my world, it means push that shit down. That's what it means. Push that shit down and keep going and keep going. My dad was a police officer. My dad is 81, and I love him. He was a police officer in New York City, and the only police officers I've ever been comfortable around are his friends. Him playing softball here in Brooklyn was the center of my world. For him to pick me up after a shift and take me to the softball game was everything. And so my dad, I've had a couple of blood uncles who were police officers. And then because of who he is, I have a host of other uncles who are Irish and Polish and Jewish and Hispanic and Middle Eastern and Black, and a good bunch of them are here. And these guys, these are all police officers my dad played with and worked with. And outside of these guys, I've never felt any level of comfort. And so I want that to change. I mean, I'm a tax-paying citizen. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I want that to change. But my experience thus far, it's been tough. So I'm working to keep an open mind. I would call myself like cautiously optimistic. I just been Black way too long. It's just as encouraging as encouraging as a lot of this is. I've been Black way too long, and so let's talk about how to move this needle. And it starts with the title of this webinar, which is Start with the Crown. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to imagine with me. I want you to imagine with me. If you're working your dream job right now, then fabulous. But just suspend your thinking just for a moment and pretend that you've just landed the job of your dreams. You're a trainer. Doesn't matter what you train on. The job of your dreams. You're going to work in teams of 3 with 2 other people who feel like they have landed the job of their dreams. Like you've been waiting for this. You can't believe how the stars have aligned and you are now working this new job. Not your own business. You have a boss and you're training. And you're doing this in groups of 3 colleagues. You love working with them. They're all passionate about what they do. Your employer tells you, that's awesome. I'm glad you're excited. Your first cohort of trainees is right behind that door in that conference room. And so you open the door, you and your 2 colleagues. And around that table, after we do quick introductions, you find out there are 2 people from Germany who just got to the country and they don't speak fluent English. You've got 3 Black folks there, 2 of them just from their introductions from the hood, and 1 lives out in the suburbs. You've got 2 Spanish speakers from Mexico. You've got 1 person there who is somewhere on the Asperger spectrum and functional, right? And so you're looking at these trainees, like this cohort you're having to work with in the job of your dreams. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to put you in breakout rooms for 3 minutes in groups of 3. And what I'd like you to do is a quick, non-judgmental, non-evaluative brain dump of what next steps you might take. They don't need to be sequential. They don't need to build on one another. I just want a quick, non-judgmental. We're not evaluating your suggestions. I want you to just be completely wide open. Like, what are you walked into this room with your 2 other colleagues, you're working the job of your dreams, and this is your cohort. What might your next steps be? And so I'm going to open up some rooms for literally 3 minutes. Okay, it looks like 4 of you per room. All right. and I'm going to bring you back, and then I'm going to ask you to fill up the chat box with your responses. All right. So I'm going to call you back in 3 minutes. What might your first steps be? Just a quick brain dump. All right. So welcome back. And what I'd like you to do is just fill the chat box with your suggestions. No right or wrong answers. I'm going to paraphrase a bunch of them and thank you in advance. Find out what each team member's strengths are. Work from there. Maximizing strengths, build relationships, make connections, establish goals, find someone who speaks their language, find commonalities, get to know everyone. Personal connections, Google Translate. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I picture. I picture a bunch of urgency, like start with an icebreaker, hear their stories, team building. That's what I that's what I picture. You know, when I when I considered this scenario, this is exactly what I anticipated. Team norms. I anticipated folks getting on Google Translate, getting your Rosetta Stone on, uh, pulling out your college yearbook and find out like who did study abroad in Germany. I think it was Rashida. We need to talk with her. If doing everything you can do, everything, YouTube videos, how to speak in simple language to folks who speak Spanish and German, finding out more about Asperger's when folks are super functional. You know what? I can't read every single chat box, but tell me if I'm wrong. I didn't hear anyone, I didn't read anyone say, you go to the boss, and let's say you're training people on how to create these remote controls here, right? And it's got 4, carry the 1, 8 buttons on it. I didn't read anything in the chat box that said, boss, maybe we can just, looking at the people we have in their backgrounds, maybe we can do a remote half this size. I didn't see any suggestions. If I'm wrong, tell me. I didn't see anyone suggest that we we pull back on the expectations. All I'm reading in this chat box are scaffolds and bridges between your cohort and the standard. Am I right? Am I off somewhere? That's all I'm reading. I'm reading desperate measures, Google Translate, Rosetta Stone. You probably, I'm gonna hashtag second language. We're on Twitter. You're all over the place. You are scrambling with urgency to figure out how to bridge the gap between your cohort and the standard. But I didn't see any suggestions about changing the standard. None. And so, in terms of what we can do to move the needle for all kids, kids of color, I'm telling you, you got to start with the crown. And so, if you're training people on how to create these remotes, this is the crown. You started with this. You started with what must be learned. You didn't even consider changing this. But you take those same 10 people and you put them in any typical classroom, more times than not, we're going to start chipping away at those expectations with love in our hearts and lots of sincerity and good feelings, but we're going to chip away at the crown because we're starting with the kid. And so we got to start with the crown and not the kid. You start with the crown. The best times, the best breakthroughs of your life have come through when you put your back to the wall and decide something must be learned and how we're going to organize to do it. Not starting with each kid or each person in that cohort and listing the 15 things that are going to prevent them from learning. That's not how it's a mindset equation. So I do tons of work with schools on the PLC process. And in 12 years, working with Rick and Becky, God rest their souls, and Dr. Bob, I've seen the transition go from not wanting to do the work to now doing the work, but people aren't getting the results that are commensurate with their effort. And I'm telling you, half of it is 50% is execution. The other 50% is mindset. And the mindset that's missing is the urgency you had when I gave you the example about the cohort. I don't mean urgency as in you don't take this seriously. I mean, I'm working my dream job. Them not learning this is not an option. So therefore, we're going to pull out all the stops to make this happen. You got to start with the crown. So you want a good mental exercise in trying to change the paradigm of the same subgroups underperforming nationally, start with the crown, not the kid. You got to start with the crown. That's how this thing happens. And if you work with me, you know that everything is based on essentials. You can't have a discussion of equity without essentials. Equity starts with what must everyone in this room know and be able to do. That's where equity starts. You can't discuss equity until we know what every kid must know and be able to do. But I'm telling you, we don't start with the crown, we start with the kid. And then we start thinking about the kid's background. And my man Brig is here. So I'm going to pick on Brig. And Brig, oh, you heard Brig? I mean, you know, Brig's parents were gangbangers back in Colorado. You heard about them, right? And you had Brig's brother, right, who was a pain and all sorts of challenges. And then Brig's come up in a shattered household and all those. And we just start chipping away, chipping away. And then with love in our hearts, we're starting to dumb it down for Brig. I'm not talking about meeting him where he is. I'm talking about where we expect him to go. Judgment is our biggest enemy. It's the biggest enemy. The question is, when you decide what's essential, the question is no longer can they or can't they. It's only how will we get them there. That's the beauty of starting with the crown. If you've worked with me, I call that the bar. The beauty of it is it only answers one question: how will we get them there? I'm going to spend 2 more minutes on this and then I'm going to move on, but I want to show you just a couple of things. Just want to drive this point home. You work with me, that's what high levels of learning means. High levels of learning is not every student mastering every target in the curriculum. High levels of learning means we seek to ensure every student masters the essentials of the curriculum. All right, so you've got a couple of nuances at play here. First is, in terms of school, this is the crown. Here's how you figure out what the crown is. What must our students master to be successful at the next grade level, the next course, the high stakes assessment, if applicable, and life beyond the K-12 system? You consider all 4 of those factors, 3 or 4, unless high stakes assessment's not applicable in your course or grade level. And a team has to come to consensus on that. And now listen, more and more schools I'm working with, Kim, we did that 3 years ago. We did power standards, we did SLOs. That's great. The next step is to treat them like they're essential. See, a big shift we have to make in terms of moving this needle for all kids and kids of color is to move from providing opportunities to learn to ensuring learning. There's a huge gulf. When I came into teaching, the primary job was to catch as many kids as you can, but give them the opportunity to learn and hope they take it. Ensure is different. There were no suggestions in the chat box to, well, we're going to do the best we can, give them an opportunity to figure out how to make this remote, and we're going to kind of sit back and see what happens and be okay if some don't. Everything in those chat boxes spoke to ensuring. And the beauty of starting with the crown is that it removes judgment. See, once there's no judgment, it opens the way for innovation, creativity like you've never known, because you're not thinking, because the kid's background is context. That's the key. When the 3 of you got in that breakout room, the people around that table, their backgrounds, their issues, that's context. That's not the reason they can't learn. But when you start with the kid or you start with the individual person and you start listening to all the adversity, listen, it is the road to, since everyone is like, we're all speaking so plainly these days, it's the road to bias. Because I'm telling you what I do for a living, and this is not an ad for what I do for a living, but I'm telling you, one thing I'm great at is I can make the process organic for you. With all its moving parts, I make it organic, easy to understand, not simple to understand, not easy to do. But you'll have no doubt about what every part of this process means, because I boil it down to its simplest form. And I only deal in universal principle. So when I leave a school and then I connect with them again and I hear, well, we changed this around because of our population. Well, one of the things I'm learning these days is that I can't settle for that, because I know that we dig down into those whys, is more than your population. We rationalize it talking about our population, but the work I do is universal principle. It's universal. And so when intervention time goes from being specifically for the results of a recently administered common assessment, like results that are hot off the press, and a quick regroup, we take intervention time from that and make it about specific subject matter. Like this is about reading, intervention time, win time, whatever you want to call it, or math. Those are just fancy ability groups with Gina Tay sprayed on them, and it doesn't fool me, I'm telling you. And it's not going to get us where we need to go. And so we got to start with the crown. You want to try something, you try that. Make a game of it. Start with the crown, not with the kid.
Hey, Ken, can you speak to something real quick? Can I just
Yes,
ask you
sir.
a question?
Yes, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. My name's Zach. I love that mindset, but I want to just kind of challenge my own thinking here. Always have been focused on that relationship piece and really getting to know each individual student, who
Yep.
they are, their story. So obviously that judgment that I have, or that lens that I'm looking through, it's human nature, but it's so important to get to know those kids so that
Yeah.
they can get to the crown and
Yes.
understand everything we want them to do. So maybe just kind of talk to that a little bit. Like, is there a balance, or how do you, because humans, human nature is to judge.
That's a great question, Zach. All I want you to judge, see, it's about the equation, right? So we either start with, if you like sports, Zach, if you're a baseball coach and you're coaching kids on how to play shortstop, there's some fundamentals to playing shortstop, right?
Absolutely.
Let's say there are 5 fundamentals every shortstop's got to know.
Yep.
It doesn't matter who your kids are, where they're from, what you learn about them. It does not matter. All you're concerned about is that they walk away with at least those 5 fundamentals. And so it's all about the equation. Building relationships is really important. The key is, have you decided that those kids have to walk out mastering those 5? Once you've decided that, then everything you learn in relationship becomes context.
Yes.
Right? If you don't, if you think, well, I mean, the kids from, the rural areas or the hood, they only have to learn 3, then their background becomes fertilizer for excuses. So it's all context. So I want you to continue to dig in and build those relationships. And when you find out that you got kids with no internet at home, then it's, all right, what bridge do I need to build so that that kid can walk out with this despite not having internet at home? The problem is when you find out the kid doesn't have internet at home, and then you decide, well, they can just make a smaller version of this, even though we've deemed this as essential. So it's just the equation, right? So one is outcomes focused, and so we all judge, and I love that you mentioned that. It's the context of the judgment. It's the context.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
Yes, sir. It's a great question. I appreciate it. So that's gonna move me right into my second point. I'm watching the clock here. I'm watching the clock. Naj, I'm watching the clock. I'm gonna leave time for Q&A. Now listen, don't stop the car, man. That's my second piece of advice. Don't stop the car. Don't stop the car. And I wish I had a bunch of fancy slides with images on to explain this stuff, but I don't. Here's the deal. Every human being is going to walk in with some level of challenges, right? Adversity and academics, right? There's the adversity, then there's the academics. The adversity, the academics. And the best way I can describe it is this. I didn't grow up in abject poverty, but my parents both worked 2 jobs to make ends almost meet. We lived check to almost check. We had more month than the money, if you understand what I'm saying. Like there was one week we'd be borrowing from Miss Brown, and the next week it was nothing for Miss Brown to be borrowing from us. Our house was equipped with several 100-foot extension cords. It was nothing for an extension cord to go out the window of your house into Miss Brown's house because her electricity's on and ours is off. And my parents made an adventure of it, right? And different utilities knocked out every once in a while. But the bottom line is, at the end of any of those bouts with adversity, or the fact that, while I didn't live in abject poverty, I had no sense of style. Like all my style was based on what my cousin Dwayne grew out of, because he's 3 years older than me. And whatever he grew out of, I got to wear. None of those conversations ever ended with, and this is why you won't be able to learn as much in school. And this is why people will think less of you. And this is why people will expect less of you. You see, because my parents and a handful of my teachers, while dealing with my adversity, they never pulled the car over. They slow the car down, tell you to jump in, they keep the car moving toward those academics. And what I find in too many schools is, if you have like academics and adversity, right, they're Velcroed, we pull the car over, and then we separate the Velcro, and then we start staring at the adversity, and then our heart starts breaking, and we start lamenting, and we just go, oh, mother, poor baby, and they don't have this, and they don't have that, and we stop the car. Now, I've been in contact, I don't know if she's on, I think she's on today, Anika Baker Busby, because Leslie Elementary School, and I mean, they're not in Warner Robins, Georgia, and I'm talking about they brought that school back from dirt. 120% everything, sex trafficking, drugs, all that stuff. And all he did was apply this universal principle. Brig Lean is on this call right now. He's a former principal. So it's not always just urban areas. I mean, Brig had, school was the hot mess express as well. And all they focused on those universal principles, and they did not separate. They didn't stop the car. They dealt with adversity and academics moving forward. Moving forward, we got to deal with both. When we stop the car and start staring at all the things that give us heartbreak is more harmful than anything else. Our kids don't need heartbreak. They need advocates. They need you to behave the way you did in that breakout room. While, as Zach said, building relationships. I built relationships for one reason, so I could yank those kids and pull their tails toward their goals. Okay, and so you should never put your hands on a child. I was very physical as a teacher, and you should always be careful. That's my disclaimer. But I put my hands on kids all the time with an H, all the time. It's probably why I'm not in the classroom anymore. But the bottom line is, I built relationships so that I can become that much more of an influencer and pull them where they need to go. That's why essentials are so important. Without essentials, you know what you're going to do? You're going to decide that Brig is from such a traumatic background that if he grows a little bit, it's good. And that is good as long as Brig knows what this is. Because we decided every 7th grader's got to walk out with this, and Brig's a 7th grader. And if Brig is way behind on that, that's okay. You celebrate that little bit of growth. You stuff his pocket with some Jolly Ranchers, some Now Laters, and then you show him where he must go. But without this, or we having different, this is for one kid, here's for another kid, and we've got a different one for another kid based on who they are and where they're from. Those are not essentials. And so don't stop the car. Don't stop the car. It drives me crazy when all these conversations around kids' adversity aren't joined with the context of moving them forward academically. I didn't learn that at school. And the power of what we do is that kids spend most of their waking hours with us. And so what they hear from us most and see from us most, more importantly, is what they'll absorb. No one told me that wearing hand-me-downs and ill-fitting clothes meant I wasn't as gifted as anyone else. No one told me that. No one at my house told me that. And so I'm telling you, we've got to get away from that. The kids aren't going to break, and they don't need our heartbreak. They don't need our heartbreak. They need us to advocate. All right, let me check my notes for a second. Because what happens is when we don't do that, when we stop the car, when we pull the car over and then we separate the academics from the adversity, and we stare at the adversity, that's when we get bless your heart syndrome and pobrecito syndrome and that school syndrome. And you know what that school is? Poor white folks, black folks, brown folks, or any school with a little bit of diversity in the area. That's all mindset. These are the same kids, the ones where our hearts are breaking for, that'll go home and get on a video game. Have you messed around with video games of late? I can't even, the complexity of video games these days, the productive struggle involved, the multitasking, the strategizing. I got my eye on Kelly. I'm playing Kelly. I got to keep my eye on her game while I'm focusing on my game. And we wondering if kids can handle pressure? Come on now. Come on. And so if you want to move that needle, you got to start with the essentials. And you can't stick your toe in it. You can't stick your toe in it. All right, I'm going to say one more thing, and then we're going to open this up for questions. So I know there's a tide turning. I don't know what it's like. I know a common lament is you have no idea what it's like to be black, and I get that. And I have no idea what it's like to be white. I have no idea. And I know not with every white person I've come across and my colleagues and friends, but with some, I know there's this overwhelming feeling of guilt, and I get it. I can I can empathize. I don't know what that feels like, but I can empathize. And what I'm here to tell you is something that so my wife turned me on to this YouTube video by Dr. Michael Beckwith, and he was just on my street the whole time. And Corey and Matt and I have talked about this as well. It's like guilt has no place. I get it, but shake it, because it's counterproductive. We're already way too far behind, way behind the 8 ball. Guilt has no place. And I was going to say that the entire time, but then when I heard this talk by Dr. Beckwith, it really put me in mind of this thing he was saying the other day. And that is, yes, I can understand how, if you trace back your lineage, you might have been related to folks who have committed acts of racism, whether they were normal at the time or not, or slave owners. But what Beckwith encourages us to do is, white folks do, is look, is what I call, get your John Brown on. There are also a goodly number of abolitionists. You know, my wife and I were talking about the Underground Railroad the other day, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I'm not picturing a bunch of lavish homes owned by freed Black people or ex-slaves along the Eastern Seaboard. They needed some white folks to get involved to do the hiding and the transporting. And so, if nothing else, tap into the abolitionists inside you, because that's what's needed, not the guilt. It's when those comments fly across that we let go and say, well, at least I don't think that way. That's not good enough. And I feel comfortable saying that because I'm doing this webinar today, which is way out of my comfort zone. And so I'm encouraging others to move out of their comfort zone. There are tons of abolitionists across history. We got to get our John Brown on. And he's the name of lots of just a handful of white abolitionists. Yes, Lucretia. That was a white woman. I know what you're thinking, but it was. It's 19th century too. Go figure. The last thing I want to talk about before I open it up, and I'm going to just take just a moment to do this, is if you're going to start with the crown, and that's where my focus is today. Again, there are lots of other tentacles. There's so many places you can go with this conversation. This is not the only conversation. It's not the right conversation. I'm focused on moving the needle in schools. That's what I do. I coach principals and help teams move the needle in schools in ways that work everywhere. If you're going to be serious about starting with the crown, start with the essentials, where you literally make a game of it and say, we have identified 7 skills and competencies every 4th grader's got to walk out mastering in the first quarter of the school year. First quarter, 9.5 weeks, that gives you urgency, time urgency, right? The essentials themselves give you that place where all kids have to go. And it also helps you click into that mindset of no kids walking out of here without it. Now, above the essentials, kids are going to find their place. Some are going to be more advanced than others, more proficient than others. But with the essentials, you have to have the mindset that no one is walking out without them. Make it a game so that every week in their collaborative teams, all you're doing is monitoring the progress of every student toward mastery. I know at Briggs School, kids had punch cards with the standards on there. And they did away with like formal award assemblies, and every time a kid mastered another target, they got another punch card, and then go out to the daggum Dairy Queen or the Chick-fil-A or someplace else in the area, and they got companies involved. And so they got kids and parents involved. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. You got to decide. You're not going to be able to stick your toe in this and try it. You got to decide. And I don't know the exact formal definition of decide, but I know the definition I've been using in my work as a human and as an entrepreneur for the past 25 years. And that is, I want you to think about the word decide and the suffix side, C-I-D-E, and what it's associated with, right? Pesticide, homicide, suicide, herbicide. And so when I look at the word decide and the suffix side, what I think in my mind, and this is how I've operated, is to put all other options to death. And so I'm really careful about how I use that word. I'm very careful about what we decide our essentials are, because once we decide it, it means we're going to put all other options to death. And if you are willing to really engage in moving the needle for kids of color, you start with the crown and you put all other options to death. And you get after it that way and pick your head up after several weeks and see how much further you've gone than you ever have before. Ever. But you got to decide. You got to decide. It's not going to work half-assing. It's not going to work sticking your toe in it, backing into it. You've got to decide. And at times it's going to scare your teachers, the idea that every kid's got to know how to master this, like every kid. That's why the selection of essentials is so critical and should be done with care and done collaboratively. But it's not enough to identify power standards and essentials. You then have to treat them like they're essential. And I promise you, while it's not going to solve every problem of race and prejudice in this area, there is nothing like knowing that you can influence kids beyond their adversity, background, all their challenges. And that's the work. That's the work I do. That's the work I arm. I speak vision into the lives of the adults, so you can speak vision into the lives of kids. All right. Okay. That's all right. We got 7 minutes for some Q&A. Whew, God, bro, got that white stuff forming in the corners of my mouth right now.
Ken, I have a question. Is this webinar, are you recording it? Like, would it be something we could show our staff?
Yes. I say that because I got my fingers crossed that the daggum Zoom recording stuff is working. That's my goal. My goal is to, spice it up some. And then what do the kids call it? Use some filters for right here and stuff. And then I will post it and make it available. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm looking in the chat box if there are any other questions. 99 new messages. I can't believe there are like 100 people on this call. You mentioned my cousin, Derek McCoy. No, you can't credit. Yes. Another question.
Suzanne, I'm sorry.
Hey, Suzanne.
Hey, how are you?
Groovy.
I was going to ask you this question to consider. I supervise student teachers for the universities here in Arizona. And this is such a big area of need that I think we need to start getting teachers coming in knowing how to do this and how to work this process better. Do you have any suggestions as a supervisor and instructor there? You know, I observe in the classrooms. We don't know what that will look like this year yet, of course.
Right.
But to give them, develop an awareness that they need to get on this, that they can't go in with the same thinking and, mommy model of I feel bad for that kid because his dad left, or et cetera, et cetera. And I know that's painting with a broad brush, but it's everything you've said.
Yeah, it's a lot of it.
Can you think of any ideas or ways we could kind of integrate some of this need into these student teaching experiences?
Yes, my first selfish suggestion is to hire me. The second suggestion, a brother needs to work. Brother been doing keynotes from this chair. It's not making it. Okay, so anyway, yes, I know there's work out there. I know Zaretta Hammonds, like she pops off the top of my head. But one of the reasons why this is a little bit out of my comfort zone is because I'm giving you my experience. I'm not I'm not a learned expert in the folks who actually study this stuff, but you reach out to me, Suzanne, offline, and I will look for some other reasons. But Zaretta Hammonds jumps out right away. And I was joking about, well, I wasn't joking about working, but I would love to, if there's any way to
every
partner
district
on
and
figuring
every
that stuff out.
university,
I would love that.
Every university out here would benefit from you so greatly. I mean, obviously, I can't say how awesome you are since I've worked with you. I know that firsthand.
Thank you.
But I would really, I will look into that, Zaretta Hammonds, and if you could, I will reach out to you privately.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that.
Thank you, Ken.
Hey, Ken,
you're welcome. Yes.
I have a question about actually just raising the topic about educators having conversations about inclusivity, about race of students that are not in their classrooms. So, one of the conversations that's coming up is people who work in schools that aren't very diverse, but we have to have conversations about diversity and race and an inclusive mindset.
Yeah.
So,
So,
what you got for us on that one?
well, I'm big. I'm big. I learned this from Rick. You embed structures that promote the right behavior, and then the right conversations will come from that. So when I lead schools and when I coach principals around schools, the right structures that teachers are working in effective collaborative teams, and then teachers are supported with the training and resources to be effective. Let me tell you what a collaborative team does. Real simple. We decide what's most essential and how do we organize to ensure every kid masters it. That's the work. That's the work. And so embedded in a collaborative team is going to be on our kids' approach. It may start behaviorally, it may start compliantly, but then when teachers get better results, it will become part of their DNA. But they've got to be set up to work in that way. And so when I used to consult back early, I'd want teammates to fall in love to collaborate effectively. And I realized you don't need to be in love. It'd be nice if you got along well, but I just need to make sure that I've made a case for change and arm you with the resources to make that happen. And so the first thing I think about, Derek, is an effective structure in place? Are the right collective commitments in place? Do we have a collaborative culture? Is it more than just teachers meeting? Are we focused on essentials? Because essentials, and then another thing I did as a principal is we looked at data. Of course, we looked at individual classroom data, but the one I highlighted was grade level of department data. And so when I'm highlighting fourth grade data and Derek's data is off the charts and mine isn't, but the principal's showing fourth grade data on the screen and Derek's eyes are looking like, wait a minute now, my kids are doing much better than what I see on the screen. My teammate here is either struggling because they don't have a lot of experience or whatever it is. Derek is now compelled to share his best practices. I'm compelled to receive them because we are interdependent.
Mhm.
And so I create interdependent teams, and then from there, conversations of inclusivity, of race, of prejudice. We look up and Tiffany, kids with special needs are killing it in her class. So let's find out what she's doing. But it's got to start with a structure. Without a foundation in place, your conversations are going to be heavy and they're going to feel random. You've got to start with a foundation. You got to start with a foundation that promotes collaboration through behavior and then eventually attitude, that promotes sharing data through behavior and then eventually attitude, a foundation that promotes our kids through behavior and then attitude. And that's the power of the principalship. The principal is the only person. Rick used to ask us, what's the one job that you can do that no one else can do? And we'd sit around for an hour just guessing at stuff. And it always come down to the principal is the only person who can ensure people are doing the right work the right way. The only person. And the challenge of the principalship is we can't wait for every single person to be in love and just feel good and okay, let's do it. We got to put folks in position to do the right work so they get better results that will then change their attitudes. Buy-in occurs when we do the work. Got to do the work. And principals have to be relentless about excuses. You can empathize with your staff members. Not every teacher who makes excuses is a bad person. Some folks are scared. You talk about every kid's got to walk out knowing how to make this, and you got kids coming in with tons of deficits from shattered backgrounds. This will scare the hell out of you sometimes. But the principal and the leadership team, the guiding coalition, have to be relentless about excuses, relentless and empathetic. As soon as we let in that, well, you know they're from the trailer park, or you know they're from the South Side, or from so-and-so apartments, or from Terra Boulevard, you're done. Start with the crown. I gave you all those same folks at the beginning of this hour, and every one of you, all you talked about was building bridges. That's the work we have to do in school. Start with the crown. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell at you. But it is Derek, so I can yell at Derek.
Yeah, you did yell too, but that's okay.
I want to honor time. I can't thank you enough for cutting time out of your day. We get our love at home. Dr. Anthony Muhammad via Dr. Rick DeFore. I promise you, he would hammer us home with that. He would get your love at home. I tell principals all the time. That's what he used to tell us. Tell principals all the time, look, if you do this work the right way, your gift card game going to take a hit that first year. It's going to take a hit. Whatever your gift card data was last year, it's going to drop that first year because teachers are going to be mad at you sometimes. But as soon, 3 months later, they're going to come back and say, okay, now I get it. And then here's that Starbucks gift card. It was inside my desk, but now it's yours. Your gift. I'm just telling you. That's the blessed burden of the principal. And this is coming from a people pleaser. And so we can make this happen. Thank you. Can I show you just another slide and then we're done? I apologize for going over because I know time is really valuable. I just want to finish up. All right, so I'm going to share my screen one last time. I hope my wife is proud of me that I left time for questions because I could have just run out in the street and just talked the whole time. So there's an adapted quote. Great teachers hold above the head of their students a crown they challenge and grow tall enough to wear. Start with the crown. I don't care what your demographic is. I don't care well, our population, with our demographic. I don't care what your demographic is. Start with the crown. You want to move the needle? While you're having more specific conversations around race, start with the crown. This is my contact information. I invite you to stay in touch with me. I am like your old uncle, though, sitting out on the stoop. If you got something that's time sensitive, email a brother. Like all the DMs and BMs and PMs and stuff, I don't see those as quickly, but just email me because my assistant will help keep me on track. And if you are interested in talking about how we might be able to work together, I think you've got an idea of what my area of expertise is. I love the messy people stuff. I love setting schools up and to be successful for all kids, to deliver on that promise of equity, excellence, and achievement for all students, regardless of background. I'm a coach at heart. I love coaching leaders. And this is the best way to get that conversation started. Just go to unfoldthesoul.com/contact, set up a time for us to talk, and we'll see if there's a connection there. Because the things we're talking about today, no matter how we come back, no matter what the forum is, whether it's virtual, all live, brick and mortar, a combination thereof, the things we talked about today aren't going anywhere. Every learning endeavor has essentials. And so I thank you. I thank my circle for pushing me to do this. I thank you for your time. I wish I could have gotten to more questions, and I do look forward to our paths crossing again.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Yay, fantastic.
Thanks, Ken. That was great.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
as always.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
Thanks,
much.
Ken.
That was
Thank you.
We
amazing.
love you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you
Awesome.
guys
As
too.
always.
Thank
you.
Told you
Oh
so.
man, look at the
Thank you,
people on
Ken.
here.
Thank you.
Miss Betty Shirley.
Told you so.
And I cannot tell you how timely your conversation is. It's amazing.
Oh yeah,
Thank you.
so I'm gonna hang out. I just thought about that, Mr. Walmsley, with the green screen back there, fancy guy. I'm gonna hang out here for a few minutes. How about that? Go ahead.
That would be amazing.
Go ahead, good brother.
Ken, you're always welcome back in Colorado. You know
Thank
we
you,
love
brother.
here.
Thank you. Mr. Walmsley, I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, you're doing well. I'll hang out. I'll wait as long as needed.
No, I was going to answer any more questions, thoughts. I was going to hang out for another few minutes if anybody had any. No offense if you don't. It's all good.
I had one. Can I ask one?
Let it rip.
You did kind of address it, but I do want some more clarification. I work with a student population that is vastly different from my own background, and I happen to love it.
Yep.
But I find it very difficult to find the balance between the empathy push. So for example, when I want, that crown and I want to push these students, sometimes I get from staff members who kind of share that background. Well, you don't understand what they went through, and that you don't get it because you can't relate to them on the ethnic background. And I'm saying, Okay, I understand that. I
Yep.
want to be, I mean, these are newcomers. I mean, these are children who have suffered major trauma.
Yep.
Not that that prevents them from being successful. When I want to push, sometimes I get the push back of, well, and so how can you give me some advice to respond to that, to find a good balance of the push versus the empathy?
Now, again, did I do the disclaimer already? These are my opinions. These is not research based.
No, I love your
okay,
opinions.
thank you.
That's why I asked.
So listen, we've all got things to learn and unlearn, right? The focus has been on, white people, learning and growing, but Black folk got some growing to do too. And sometimes we can be our own worst enemy in the educational environment. There have been times when that's happened, where we also can buy into those excuses. What I would challenge you to think about, Jody, is this: whatever it is you're pushing on, is it a crown? That's what you have to ask yourself. Is this something that's essential? Something
These
that's
are
either
English
gonna grow-
language learners.
No, I get it. I get it. So that's what I'm saying. If it's a crown, you need to persist. If it's a crown, and so whether it's you come in through the back door or you circumvent it in another way, whatever it takes. When I was a young teacher, I was only 6, 7 years older than my kids. And so, learning Hanson songs wasn't a big deal. I'd learn a few Hanson songs and from Shania Twain's. And, we'd make up songs to learn stuff. Whatever it takes, if you decide it's a crown, then it's important that kids have an idea of understanding, why. Like what's the why behind what you're pushing them on, how it can benefit. You may have to have those same conversations with colleagues, because if it's a crown and it's essential, that's all the world cares about, that there are no discounted gas bills for folks who grew up in Section 8 housing. Not last I checked. Or if you were in remedial reading, and I was misplaced in 3rd grade in remedial reading for about 2 weeks. So if that is, I got the paperwork. If there's a discount on your mortgage for being in remedial reading, I'm ready to hand in my paperwork and get that discount. So that's, you've got to know, and it sounds like you do, like whatever it is you're pushing on is necessary. Like either the content itself is essential or the greater good in mastering it is. And you just keep at it and continue to build those relationships. That's the push and pull. That's our burden as teachers, right? I've got something that I know you must know, that you have to know. Not know it because this is the way I've done it for the past 10 years, or not know it because the book simply says so. In my heart of hearts, I know your life is going to be better. I'm assuming you're seeing around corners for those kids, Jody. And if that's the case, you just have to continue to look for different entry points. Depending on what that second language is, reach out to some folks who've been able to make those breakthroughs and find out what that stuff is, but do not relent.
For example, just to kind of illustrate really quickly, I take newcomers and we take them for a college experience, and they get a full-on bilingual tour, and it's fabulous. And they're newcomers and they're 8th graders. And some of the pushback that I get is, well, why are you focusing on taking them to a college? These kids don't, they're not thinking about college. We need to get them off to high school. That's the main priority. And
my gosh. Okay.
Show them what they maybe can achieve in a few years if they keep learning English. It was so I was connected that I wasn't on their immediate needs. So just to kind of,
that's one of those places I would love to just like have a genie lamp and just show up in that room when people are saying that for free. I would just start to show up. I was like, where'd he come from? I would like to just show up and be a part of that conversation. That is something you must continue to do, to present college as an option. What you're doing is you are speaking vision. You have expanded those kids' world exponentially by exposing them to that. You continue to do that. And unfortunately, on the front end of things, your data is not going to come in for a couple of years until you have a kid who's like, I've applied to this college, or a graduate who comes back and says, because you took me on that tour, with my hand-me-down clothes, and we didn't have a whole lot of money, and we needed some school funds to make it happen. Because you took me there, it gave me the idea that I could do these things. So you've got to You know, they're going to beat you up at school sometimes. Continue to model, because I call that's crabs in a barrel. You know, when you're doing things that insecure folks look at and decide that makes me look bad, they're going to try to pull you back down to the mean. That's why you have crabs in a barrel on a dock. You don't need to put a top on it, because as soon as a crab tries to get out, the rest of them pull the crab back down. So you continue, be gracious, be classy, be classy.
Yeah.
Get reflections from the kids when they come back from the college tour and share those and put them up on the wall. Stay classy. Because there's someone among those teachers who's scared to pipe and say, I kind of agree with Jody. And the longer they see you persist, you're gonna make space for that teacher to come out and say, I kind of agree with you. I promise you, if there are 10 teachers beating you up in there, 3 of them are watching to see if you stay standing. 3 of them watching. Because they don't have they just, you know, we're all wired differently. Some of, you know, and you're out there on that mountain right now alone, and they're watching. And when they see you 3, 4, 5 months later, still standing, still taking kids, they're going to come out and say, you know what? I was in that room when they were beating you up, but I kind of agree. And what can I do to help? And can we take some students from this grade level? That's what's going to happen. It's part of being a visionary. It's exhilarating, and sometimes it sucks because you're just out there alone. You're out there alone. But the great thing is, you know, you can reach out to me and any of these folks anytime. We just, you know, need your bucket filled, because it is, being a visionary is tough work, man. You're seeing around corners. You're seeing the dawn before the day, and that's what you're seeing it years before, right? You're talking about 8th graders and 7th graders. It's new to the country, and you're presenting them with this kind of vision, along with opportunities to work, opportunities to learn a trade, for all those things. But you're presenting college as an option. It's incredible. So do it for the kids, and do it for those 3 teachers who are just waiting to see if you get knocked down and stay down.
Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Mr. Williams.
Stay strong, Jody.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams, I have a quick question.
You got to call me Ken.
Okay.
Let it rip, Mr. Walmsley.
All right, can Stephanie, I think it's Stephanie Deisher, she put in the comments about you came and presented to her staff, and the bar spoke to them and made it very easy to understand. Can you share what is the bar?
Yeah. So I would say the bar and the crown can be used simultaneously. That bar is that place where all kids every learning endeavor has a bar. So let's say we decide, for illustration, that this pen is essential, that every 5th grader's got to walk out knowing how to make this pen, and it's got 6 steps, right? For whatever reason, we've decided kids are not going to be in position to do well unless they know how to make this pen in 5th grade. So these 7 steps are essential. This is the bar. This is the place where every 5th grader's got to go, no matter who they are and where they're from and who their parents are and what their background is, what language they speak or don't speak, you know, what kind of assistance they get or don't get, what part of the neighborhood they live in. The beauty of the bar is that there's no judgment. This is the crown. See, once that's why I was telling Jody, if you've decided, and look, and she's decided, and I've decided too, and she didn't ask me my opinion about whether, that's a crown. Exposing kids to possibilities is a crown. So once you decide that, then your mindset becomes, how will we get them there? That's all you're thinking about. That's all you're thinking about. See, right now we got bars. We got a bar for these kids and a bar for those kids. We got a bar for the kids on this side of town and a bar for kids on that side of town. We got a bar for poor white kids, poor black kids, poor brown kids. We got a bar for the kids who don't speak the King's English. We have a bar for kids with IEPs, but there's just one bar. There's just one bar. And once you embrace that and decide that, and listen, I know who you are. I know you operate this way. You may use different terms, but there are things in your classroom, in your curriculum, that you've decided every kid's got to walk out with. I'm not talking about minimums. I'm talking about essentials. And once you decide something is essential, then the only question that remains is, how will we get them there? And when you operate from that premise of how will we get them there, then your brain is completely focused on pulling out all the stops to bridge the gap between the kid and this. Without this, you're taking it kid by kid. Where that kid comes from a solid home, where that kid has lots of support at home, where that kid has no support at home, where that kid's from the hood, where that kid's from, and then we got bars. Then we got bars. We got some kids making the whole pen, and you got this for some kids, and for the pobrecito kids, you got this, and that's where we get messed up. Now, above the bar, Mike, above the bar, there's infinite room above the bar. There are pens out here with laser pointers. They're with infrared lighting. They'll clean your hands, antibacterial stuff on it and stuff. That's above the bar. For the kids who love making pens and want to make a career of it, they can go above the bar. But for the kids, but for all kids, they got to walk out with this. Right? I use the example all the time. One of my good friends from high school, Reggie, he is the vice provost at Rice University. He is one of the foremost engineering minds in our nation, and we were in Algebra 1 together. And he loved math. Now me, I hung on to that algebra bar by my cuticles. By my cuticles. But wherever that bar was, he and I mastered the same content. And then he went a lot further. Right? So for those of us thinking of, whether this is a one size fits all, it's not. Kids are going to find their place. Reggie's super proficient in mathematics and sciences. So he went through the bar. Me, I was just scraping to get out of there. And that bar, again, is that place where all kids have to go. And I'll share my screen for a sec. Right? So that's how we define high levels of learning. Like every kid masters the bar. So Michael, is it Mike or Michael? Third grade? Last
Yes.
I learned. Yeah, so you and your third grade teammates, high levels of learning for you means if all three of you teach math and you decide you look at the curriculum for the entire year and you break it up by quarters and you decide in the first quarter there are 6 targets. We've talked to fourth grade teachers. They gave us an idea of what they want fourth grade kids to walk in knowing. We've talked with fourth grade teachers. We vetted it with them. There are 6 competencies, skills or competencies that every kid's got to master in the first quarter. Now, your goal is 15, but out of those 15, they got to get these 6. That's the bar, and that's how you define high levels of learning. And the bar is determined. It's an imperfect science, but it's got to start with teachers. What targets must our students know to be successful at the next grade level, the next course, the high stakes assessment, and life beyond the K-12 system? And the beauty of it is once you have decided upon what that bar is, then all you're thinking about is the innovative problem solving. The only question that gets answered is this one: how will we get them there? And so their backgrounds, their challenges, the adversity they're dealing with, their home life, it's all context now. It's all context. It's no longer a reason they can or can't. And the bar is so important that intervention time should be reserved to help kids who need more time to reach that bar, and to help kids who have mastered the content be extended and enriched in real time. That's what intervention time is for. Everything is in the service of kids mastering essentials. That's the work. Common assessments are to help us know if kids are progressing toward mastery of essentials. And then once you have that in place, once you have that bar in place, and you have the mindset in place, then your grade level becomes a lab environment. So if you got 2 teammates, 25 kids each, that's 75 kids on the table, all you're doing from week to week is monitoring every kid's progress toward mastery of those. So 75 kids are now yours. 75 kids. And as a principal, since I'm talking about grade level data, there are no boundaries anymore. So it's not my class versus your class. It's what do we need to do? So every breakthrough you talk about at your team meetings is in the service of that bar. Every breakdown and frustration is in the service of mastery of that bar. Everything you find on Pinterest, Teachers Pay Teachers, and all these other places y'all go where all this stuff is accessible and free. Unlike when I was a teacher, when I had to pay for teacher resources, pay for them. You're spoiled. You're spoiled. You're spoiled. I'm sorry, I sound like your old uncle, but when I started teaching, I was making $29,700. And it was my first job, like first legit job. I had a lot of under the table cash jobs. My fiance then, who was now my wife, I remember calling her. She's a couple years younger than me. And I told her, baby, I'm making $29,700. You don't have to work. She'll tell you. Give a thumbs up, babe. You don't have to work. And then, Michael, when I got my first check, and I looked down this list, I said, who the hell is Micah and FICA and Dyka and all these cats got my money? But despite that, I bought Mailbox Magazine. $20. $5.95 a copy. 20. Kathy feels me. Joanne feels me. $24.95 a year, and they had a nerve to combine October and November. I wrote them cats. I said, look, for $25.95 a year, I want one for November and October. I digress. The bar, baby. It's the bar. The bar is everything, but it's more than identifying. Then you have to have that mindset, right? And so, again, you decide these 6 targets, what every kid's got to master, make a game of it. And so what happens is, the bar becomes what you're after, and then so egos begin to dissipate. You ever walk into a room and somebody's like, they're frustrated, they're exasperated legitimately, like, I've done everything I can. I can't think of anything more. I've done everything. I've tried everything. I got no more ideas. But you're sitting there with like this idea that you're like, I could share this. I actually do have one more idea. But the look on that teacher's face really is saying, I wish you damn would share one idea after I told you I've tried everything. I wish you would share another idea after I told you I tried everything. I wish you would do that. Right? I've been there. I've been on both sides of that. I've been on the side where I've tried everything, and I look around that room like, I wish somebody would say like there's another idea. And I've been on that side where I've had the idea, but I was scared to say it. See, when that bar is in place and you make a game of it, all you care about is that they win. So when I come in and I'm tapped out and my pockets are pulled inside out and I got nothing else, Michael's not worried about saying, you know what, let's try this one more thing. I got this one other idea, because all we care about is the outcome. No egos, all outcome. But it's got to start with that bar. You got to start with the bar, which is, it can be a little bit of a messy process, but that's okay. That's where equity starts. That's equity, by the way. Once you decide that every kid's got to walk out knowing how to create this, and then you take into account all their issues and their strengths and their challenges, and then you build bridges for every one of those kids, that's what equity is. Equity means you're giving every kid what they need when they need it to do this with urgency. Urgency as in time, not as in, I think I get it next year. Like, no. You want that to happen after everybody picks their heads up and they're covered with coal dust and sweat, and most of your kids are there, and there's still a couple of kids who need some extra time. You're still going to lose sleep, but you'll not lose sleep in terms of your effort. Focused, right effort. And that's why intervention time is so important. Okay, Marilyn, go.
I'm sorry.
No, let it rip.
And I'm going to speak from the perspective of a mom who has a child that had an IEP all through high school. When you don't give up on that child as a teacher, there's always going to be some teachers that really give up and don't care. But there's always going to be that one particular teacher that's going to be there and push and push and push, even though the IEP is in place, but they know that they can go above and beyond. As a mom that has that child, and she's in college now, and I'm blessed that she is doing the best she can right now. But if there's always a teacher, no matter what, to push that child, even though they might seem to be struggling, they're just learning different. And when you find that strive that every kid has to learn different, it's the best thing to see ever. When this child was coming home from high school for the first time, and she had someone tell her that she was able to do what she can do to graduate. I cried, she cried. I emailed her teacher, I emailed her counselor, I emailed the superintendent, the principal, I emailed everyone. I was so happy to hear that someone had faith in her. And even that little bit of faith that you give your student goes a long way. I have a kid that literally I'm doing 2 things at once, and I'm trying to finish transcripts at the same time. And me being a counselor, I literally had a kid and I said, oh my God, congratulations, you passed, you're graduating next week. And the one thing she said was, you never gave up on me and you didn't let me drop out. And just that little bit of faith that you give a kid, even though they're struggling, even though you see them struggling, positivity, always give them positivity, always build them up, always look for ways to, like you said, always look for ways to have them go beyond, above and beyond. And I actually appreciate Miss Ayana Thorne inviting me the last time to participate in these webinars. And actually she made me, she was like, I better sign up for this one, which I did. But I do appreciate everything you have said, and hopefully just taking away from a mom's perspective, just giving those kids that hope that they need is the best. Sorry.
I love that. And I'm going to make one more comment in that context. And so I'm going to show you my screen one last time, and I thank you for hanging with me on this, because I love that story. I honor that story. I just I want more moms and dads to have stories about more teachers, not just the one, but more, and teams that do the same thing. But here's what I want you to think about. So collective responsibility, right, which is a step up from accountability. Two conditions have to be in place. And the first condition is what I want. We believe in our ability to ensure high levels of learning for all kids. That's the first condition. The second condition is we make the commitment to ensure learning for all kids. I'm not afraid to tell you that with the first condition, I took some liberties with it several years ago. It used to read, we believe that all kids can learn at high levels. And several years ago, I decided I'm done with that question. I'm done with that. That's not really what it comes down to. To me, that's a given that kids are going to learn, that kids can learn at high levels. That's a given. The real question is, do we believe in our ability to ensure high levels of learning for all kids? Our ability. And when I think about, and I have teachers think about, and leaders think about the best teachers you ever had, the best teachers you ever had never needed to see a class list to know they were going to have a successful year. Didn't make it an easy year, right? Didn't make it a less rocky year sometimes. But those best teachers, they speak it into them. How well do I know my students on day one? Not well, but I'm speaking greatness into their lives from day one. Why? Because of my confidence in me and my teammates. So what this always comes down to is the talent in the room. When I work with schools and they want to say, well, your population I said, I don't need to know about your population yet. I need to meet your adults, because that's where the rubber meets the road. And so no matter where your kids come from, what adversity they bring, it always comes down to, I work with principals. Do you believe you got the talent in that room? That's what that teacher spoke into your daughter's life. That teacher was confident in him or herself and his or her teammates. And it came out in the form of, Melissa's daughter, you can do this, you can do this, you can be this, you can do this. And so I don't want you to stress out about whether or not you actually see that on a kid, because some kids walk in wearing it on their sleeves, and other kids, you got to pan for some gold. At my school, we talked about pressing coal, because we were 95% everything. Like everything not good. And so we're pressing coals for diamonds. We're pressing them. Every kid's got gifts. I believe if the list of special needs characteristics were long enough, and the list of giftedness characteristics were on a ledger, we'd all have boxes checked on both sides. But it always comes down to the adults. And so I didn't need to wait to see my kids' gifts surface. I'm speaking it into you because me and my teammates, we badasses. And everybody at the school is at my disposal for whatever we need. You speak it into them. And then over time, you learn enough about them to learn about their gifts, and you learn about their strengths and all those things. But it comes down to, do we believe we have the ability? Us. Not do you believe in kids? Do you believe in the ability of your staff? And for principals, if you're not sure, then your job is to arm your teachers, is to get them coached up in those areas, is to remove, you've got too many initiatives going on, remove some of those initiatives so they can focus on the right work the right way. Because that whole bar thing, Michael, is systemic. It's going to start off feeling mechanical. It's going to start off feeling like we're reading off a protocol. And then eventually we get better and better. As James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, our goal is to get 1% better at this every week. Last thing I'll say is, I work with teams and I'm coaching them and I say, listen, here are a list of characteristics. We focus on data. We make it a safe environment to talk about data. We learn from each other's practices. We share kids. We share each other's burdens. We focus on effective protocols. Look, if a team committed to those 6 things, no academic goals for the year, just those 6 things. We focus on essentials and treat them like they're essential, right? You got that handful of things, and that's all they focused on. And their goal was to only get 1% better each week at those 6 things. If they said no academic goals, how do you think they're going to end up the year? How do you think those kids are going to end up that year? They're going to be in great position. I'm not suggesting that we don't set goals. We have to set goals. What I'm saying is the real improvement comes with the team thinking systemically. It's not executing the protocol. It's how can we execute it better? How can we go from, we got this data, how do we move right into effective intervention quickly? We got this data, how do we then look at each other's practice and look for those practices that worked? It's about getting systemically better. Everything rests on the adults. Everything rests on the adults. Wow. Any other questions for the good of all?
I'm just wondering what role it plays to have the students value the crown. You know, it's one thing for us as teachers and admins to value the crown. What if the students, or now I'm thinking more in light of remote learning,
Yep.
when the parents aren't valuing the crown?
Yeah. So
how do you move the needle forward in that scenario?
Well, so I had that in my community. Not only was it a community full of, we had a lot of parents who probably weren't prepared to be parents, but also we as a school district did our part in alienating the hell out of them as well. Like, we scared them away. And so my parents were traumatized. So the first thing we had to lean on was what we could control. Like, we've got them from 8:30 to 2:45. We're going to focus on that. Understanding what's right? Focus on that. We had a lot of kids going home with no support. So how do we focus the instruction in a way where kids can get a head start on what they need to do? Are we giving homework just for the sake of giving homework? Are we giving 1 to 25 on Monday and 1 to 50 odd even on Tuesday just because of the way it was given to us? Like, we have to think about all those things. Secondly, kids absolutely have to understand where the bar is. They've got to know. They've got to be goal setters. There was a time in education where teachers didn't even get the data. It was all the principals only had the data. And so school systems realize that if we share the data with teachers, they might be able to better plan for achievement. And so there are no resting places below the bar. The bar's got to be based on where students go, not where they're from. And this is the one I want to show you. Tell the kids where the bar is. Tell them where the bar is and explain it to them. Now, sometimes the why of learning is such that, it lends itself to why something's important, and other times it doesn't. But kids have to know the why. They have to know the crown. And remember, you're helping kids like unlearn a lot of stuff. And I can tell you, the kids that we led and taught and cared for were accustomed to abandonment. So Kathy, when you came at them with a crown, they're going to like hit you in the mouth and knock you down and see if you get back up. And when we didn't get back up, it just confirmed to them that it's just more of what they know, which is, again, why we got to work in collaborative teams, because some days they're going to wear you out, and then somebody's got to be there to tap. Also, when kids are more successful, you have happier parents. While my parents, a lot of them weren't prepared to be parents, every kid's the apple of someone's eye. And we turned our whole parent relationship around by sending home happier kids. And happier kids are more successful kids, not kids just being patted on the back and pobrecito to death, but I'm telling you, feeling more successful. We would have our PTA meetings. It'd be half cultural arts, because I'd make an announcement. I hear a bunch of car keys jingling, people about to leave. I'd run some kids out on stage to demonstrate something. And then the parents would sit back down. And then I'd make another announcement and run some more kids out there. And that's how you do it. And we feed them. And so we never stopped trying to we had so much of a high transient rate. Part of our vision was to become that school parents are pulling our kids out to send them to. And every day that we inch toward that school, from a social emotional perspective and academically, more our parents came back. And we treated them like clients, whether they came in house coats ready to cuss somebody out or were, dressed like they come from their law office. We really worked to treat them. It was a process, but it was never an excuse. Kids who have succeeded because their parents aren't involved. Like their parents get involved, it's gonna make it worse. So are the odds in our favor when parents are on board? Absolutely. We never gave up on it, but it's never an excuse for what we can accomplish between 8:30 and 2:30, whatever it is, 9 and 3. That's what we focus on. It's a great question. My. Okay. I can't thank you guys enough. I can't believe it's been 90 minutes, 97 minutes. I thank you. Again, you've got my contact information. Feel free to stay in touch. I don't have all the answers, but I'm pretty well connected. Like I know people, man.
Hey, Ken, I challenge you to start thinking of episode number 2.
Matt,
So,
I've had enough of your challenges, sir. Matt is part of the reason why I did this thing in the first place. Is like you talk about low expectations. I'm appealing to my white friend. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Like, he's talking me into it. You got to do it. And sending me texts and like setting me up and stuff like that. Like I was trying to engage in some learned helplessness, but he wasn't having it. Which is why we're here. So I will definitely consider that with your help, Matt. I will consider that, good brother.
No, seriously, let's keep this conversation going.
That crown and reach for that bar.
Yes, he did.
He gave you a crown.
He did. I'm not gonna lie to you. He did. He's one of the first ones out the gate. So.
Well, you're a long ways from the bar, brother. So keep it going.
So, thank you, everyone. And if there's an opportunity to have another conversation, and I'm going to sit with it for a minute, I'm going to sit with it. I will be in touch. But thank you. Make it a great day. Tap into your inner abolitionist, no matter who you are and where you're from. Right, and start with the crown.
I think we need a T-shirt. I'm tapping into my inner abolitionist.
Yeah, I like it. Start with
with a crown.
That. I'm not a designer. Everybody got any designing skills? Get at me. Holla at your boy, because I don't have those skills. Have a great day.
Thank you.